Phones lit up like sirens, and the chamber's marble calm shattered as a hashtag burned brighter than the state seal. Grant Whitaker said, "It's a glitch," but the screen kept refreshing and the numbers climbed like floodwater. Reporters circled the steps, sniffing for blood and quotes. Maya Chen said, "Stay off camera," yet cameras found him anyway, hungrily tracking his breath and blink rate. A tweet thread pulsed with receipts, clipped and captioned to kill context. Evan Cole said, "Distance is prudent," while forwarding statements to friendlier desks. In the family group chat, bubbles appeared, then vanished, as if shame could be typed and erased. Laura stood by the window, watching neighbors pretend not to look. Donors paused payments. Staff paused loyalty. Grant whispered, "This isn't me," but the crowd preferred the man on their screens. A trending arrow rose, and dignity fell with it. By morning, headlines spoke like verdicts, and all of them rhymed with doom. Grant Whitaker said, "There's context," but context was a language no one wanted to learn. Clips looped and trimmed him into a villain who fit neatly into a square. Maya Chen said, "We need a statement," while editors chose thumbnails that looked like guilt. A donor wrote a careful pause that sounded like goodbye. Staffers drafted options, each apology polished to a mirror that reflected someone else's face. The inbox became a field of landmines disguised as questions. Evan Cole said, "Delay, then deny," which sounded like strategy and smelled like smoke. Laura watered a plant that didn't need it and watched the soil drown. The #1 trend lingered, and the chamber doors felt heavier than iron. The phones learned new tricks, buzzing in patterns that predicted dread. Grant Whitaker said, "They'll listen if we explain," but explanation dragged its feet while outrage sprinted. A classmate from years ago surfaced with a memory sharpened by time and attention. Maya Chen said, "We must show receipts," gathering emails like shields that would bend on impact. Evan Cole said, "Silence is safer," and forwarded another rumor to a whispering thread. In hallways, staff walked as if stepping over invisible shards. A committee aide asked for distance with a smile that never reached her eyes. Laura folded laundry that was already folded, wishing tasks could heal timelines. The thread added flames to its own fuel, and the day unspooled without mercy. The first sponsor was a polite retreat wrapped in corporate empathy. Grant Whitaker said, "We built that build together, but loyalty bent to math and heat." A statement arrived that praised values while erasing him between commas. Maya Chen said, "We pivot," sketching a plan that looked like a bridge across fog. Evan Cole said, "Let the market decide," and the market did with a shrug that shattered calendars. In the district office, volunteers asked whether they should still come tomorrow. Laura sorted mail and found a letter with handwriting that trembled. The letter wished strength, then begged for distance if anyone asked. The hashtag didn't sleep, it learned to hum like power lines. Grant stared at the seal on the wall and wondered when symbols forget their owners. By evening the crowd had rhythm, a chant without a location, a verdict without a judge. Grant Whitaker said, "I can face them," but the them was everywhere and nowhere, a swarm made of pixels and pain. Maya Chen said, "We hold until morning," yet tomorrow felt like an echo of tonight. Evan Cole said, "There's an opening if we offer a resignation with dignity," and the word dignity collapsed like wet paper. Laura stood in the doorway, holding a coat no one would wear. Outside, a reporter rehearsed a closer about legacy and consequence. The chamber lights dimmed, and the trending arrow didn't. Grant placed his phone face down and listened to it vibrate like a trapped insect. Somewhere, a bell rang for the end of a session and the start of a reckoning. Before the firestorm, Grant Whitaker stood at a podium where applause echoed like a hymn. He said, "We can build trust together," and back then, trust felt like bricks stacked high. Laura sat in the front row, her smile soft and steady. Volunteers scribbled notes as if each phrase carried destiny. Maya Chen whispered stage directions, and the senator's words rolled like clean thunder. Cameras captured him as a leader, not a defendant. The chamber smelled of varnished wood and hope. Grant said, "This is our moment," and no one doubted him. But memory had edges sharper than present shame. Now when he closed his eyes he saw the promise, not the hashtags. His voice then had gravity. Today, it trembled. Evan Cole had smiled in that moment too, eager hands clapping for the future he already measured. Later that night, silence stretched across the kitchen table like a battlefield with no armies. Laura said, "Do you remember that night?" And her tone was a thread stitched with fear. Grant nodded, eyes rimmed, spoon idle in soup that cooled untouched. Their son passed through the hallway, earbuds blocking the storm. Laura whispered, "We're still us," but her hands trembled when she reached across. The television in the corner showed his own face under headlines, and he turned it off too late. Grant said, "I can fix this," though the lie tasted like ash. The lights above flickered once, humming low, as if even the wiring doubted him. He stared at his reflection in the spoon, a face he barely recognized. Maya Chen was the anchor. No storm could easily drag. She sat across from Grant in a side office where dust filtered through blinds. Maya said, "They can't erase your whole life with a thread," her voice sharp but gentle. Grant said, "It already feels gone," pressing his palm to his temple. She laid printouts on the desk like shields, evidence and timelines. Maya whispered, "We fight with facts, not fear." Yet she knew facts bent easily when outrage fed the crowd. Outside, footsteps rushed, phones buzzed, whispers traveled. In here, time slowed, framed by stacks of case files. Grant slumped in the leather chair whispering, "What if no one believes us?" Maya held his gaze steady, refusing to blink. Laura's silence became louder than headlines. At a family gathering she chose the corner, her eyes fixed on nothing. Relatives asked nothing, fearing answers. Grant approached, whispering, "I need you to stand with me," but her gaze drifted past him. She said nothing, sipping water as if it held secrets. Their son avoided eye contact, laughter from cousins filling the room with noise that excluded them. Laura's silence weighed more than insults online. It was the betrayal of absence, a withdrawal that burned deeper. Grant said, "Even you," and her silence replied with a blade sharper than words. The noise of family carried on, but he heard only the hollow between them. Alone in the bathroom, Grant studied the mirror like a jury. He said, "This is not me," but his reflection disagreed. The man staring back had shadows under his eyes, and shoulders sagging like a broken banner. Water ran, steam rising, but the clarity refused to fog. He splashed his face, droplets racing down, yet nothing washed away. Maya's words echoed, Laura's silence thundered. Evan's careful texts whispered opportunism between the lines. Grant whispered, "Who am I now?" The mirror offered no answer. His phone buzzed on the counter, lighting with another headline. He let it ring, afraid the mirror might answer louder than the screen. The first sponsor's retreat was followed by the second, then the third, each with press releases polished like eulogies. Grant Whitaker said, "We wrote those policies together," but his voice vanished under the weight of silence. Maya Chen slammed her palm on the table, muttering, "They never cared about principles, only optics." Evan Cole typed notes with a smirk that looked like preparation for opportunity. In the inbox, contracts dissolved line by line, signatures dissolving into void. Laura scrolled headlines in the kitchen, each one turning her expression colder. The chamber whispered louder than speeches ever did. Allies pulled strings to distance themselves, and one by one, doors closed. Grant pressed his forehead against the cool glass of his office window, whispering, "Am I already gone?" The old posts returned like ghosts, screenshots stripped of dates, context erased. Grant Whitaker said, "That was decades ago," his voice cracking as he scrolled through distorted fragments. Maya Chen said, "We explained the timeline," though she knew explanation never outpaced outrage. On television, anchors leaned forward with eyes lit, savoring the downfall in prime time. Laura closed the blinds, muttering, "Everyone sees everything." Evan Cole texted another journalist, with a line carefully twisted. A neighbor's car slowed outside, headlights pausing like judgment. The thread grew teeth sharper than truth. Grant whispered, "I can't fight shadows." His reflection in the dark glass looked like a stranger on trial. Betrayal began quietly, hidden in whispers that spread faster than headlines. Evan Cole said, "It's time to think of succession." His voice sugar-dipped for colleagues' ears. Grant Whitaker sat in a corner, unaware his ally had turned rival. Maya Chen sensed it, catching fragments of phrases like knives. Staffers avoided eye contact, pretending to type. The rumor was crafted with precision, painting Grant as unstable, unfit, already finished. Evan's smile grew sharper as he pressed send on another message. Grant said, "We still have allies," but the words rang hollow. Laura folded a newspaper in the kitchen. Headline bold, her silence a verdict of its own. The enabler fed the mob with practiced hands, feeding rumors disguised as leaks. Evan Cole said, "Transparency matters," while sliding private notes to waiting journalists. Grant Whitaker said, "This is sabotage," when fragments surfaced, but his words drowned in digital storms. Maya Chen confronted Evan in a hallway, voice low but edged with fire. He smiled, answering, "I only serve the truth," though his truth was sharpened by ambition. Laura overheard whispers on the street, neighbors' voices hushed but clear. At night, Grant's phone pulsed with leaks that cut deeper. He muttered, "Every word is a weapon now," his palms trembling. The walls of Grant's world pressed tighter each day, the silence inside heavier than the noise outside. Grant Whitaker whispered, "I can't breathe in here," pacing his office. Maya Chen said, "We're not finished," though her tone carried exhaustion. Laura no longer came to meetings, her chair empty, absence louder than words. Evan Cole stood near the door, phone glowing with another notification, face unreadable. Reporters lingered outside like vultures, their silhouettes against frosted glass. Grant stopped, pressing his hand on the seal mounted on the wall, asking, "Does this still mean anything?" The room answered with silence, and the storm outside grew louder. The evidence arrived like a whisper in a hurricane, small but sharp enough to pierce the noise. Maya Chen said, "Look at this," sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were records that contradicted the viral thread, timelines impossible to ignore. Grant Whitaker said, "They twisted it," his voice breaking with both relief and rage. The papers revealed edits, cropped screenshots, context stripped away to manufacture outrage. Laura peeked in, her silence cautious, her eyes scanning the truth she had prayed existed. Evan Cole glanced at the documents and said, "This changes nothing," but his fingers trembled as he adjusted his tie. Maya whispered, "It proves they lied," and the air shifted. Grant held the folder close as if it were armor, whispering, "Maybe I'm not the monster they painted." The betrayer's mask slipped when the cameras were gone. Evan Cole said, "It was always survival," his voice low, words dripping calculation. Grant Whitaker stared, realization dawning that the downfall had been engineered from within. Maya Chen hissed, "You leaked it," her tone a knife. Evan shrugged, posture casual, but his eyes burned with ambition. Grant whispered, "I trusted you," though trust had been the first casualty. Evan leaned in, smirking. "Politics isn't trust, it's timing." Laura stepped back from the doorway, hand over her mouth, the betrayal slicing deeper than headlines ever had. Silence stretched like glass before shattering. In the background, the outsider held fragments no one expected. A forgotten intern named Daniel Reed said, "I saw the edits," his voice unsteady but urgent. He had witnessed files being altered, screenshots cropped, context stripped. Daniel had been ignored before, dismissed as insignificant, but the weight of truth pressed too heavily to keep inside. Maya Chen turned sharply, demanding, "Why didn't you speak earlier?" Daniel whispered, "No one believed me." Grant Whitaker leaned forward, whispering, "Do you still have proof?" The intern nodded, clutching a flash drive like a lifeline. For the first time in days, hope pierced despair. The loyal ally unearthed what others had overlooked. Maya Chen said, "I checked the metadata," her fingers flying across the laptop keys. Files revealed timestamps proving the viral edits were planted, not organic. Grant Whitaker muttered, "They built a lie," his voice shaking. Laura stepped closer, whispering, "Then say it loud." Evan Cole hovered near the door, jaw tightening as the evidence illuminated his betrayal. Maya snapped, "We go public with this," determination blazing. Grant looked at her, torn between fear and resolve, whispering, "Will they even care about truth?" Silence pressed in, the kind before a storm breaks. The realization hit like thunder. Betrayal was deeper than public outrage. It was orchestrated. Grant Whitaker said, "It wasn't the mob, it was him," his voice trembling with fury. Maya Chen nodded, whispering, "He built the fire and let them fan it." Laura closed her eyes, a tear slipping as silence finally broke. Evan Cole said nothing, his silence more damning than denial. Daniel Reed whispered, "The proof is solid," holding the drive like a verdict. Grant clenched his fists, whispering, "I'll face them all," though his voice carried equal parts rage and despair. The room felt smaller, but the truth made the air crackle like a storm about to break. The chamber buzzed louder than ever, but Grant Whitaker walked toward the microphones as if drawn to judgment. He said, "You will hear me tonight," voice trembling yet burning. Maya Chen whispered, careful, gripping her notes, but he pushed forward. Reporters leaned closer, cameras humming like insects. Grant raised the folder, shouting, "These are lies you consumed like fire." The crowd gasped, not from belief but from spectacle. Laura stood in the shadows, hands clenched, her silence screaming louder than chants outside. Evan Cole smirked at the back, already calculating the fallout. Daniel Reed muttered, "They'll twist even this," clutching the flash drive like a relic. Grant's words echoed, "I will not vanish quietly," his voice breaking under weight and fury. Evan Cole stepped forward, stealing the moment. He said, "We all regret the mistakes of leadership," his voice calm, crafted for cameras. Maya Chen spat, "You orchestrated this," but her words were drowned in the flash of shutters. Grant Whitaker clenched the podium, whispering, "Betrayer," his rage boiling. Evan smiled wider, pretending to mourn while planting daggers of words. Laura looked away, unable to face the performance. Daniel whispered, "Proof doesn't matter when they crave blood." The press ate the performance like a feast, scribbling the version Evan had gifted them. Grant's body shook, his fury framed as instability, his silence painted as guilt. The meltdown came not in fire but in collapse. Grant Whitaker whispered, "I gave my life to this," then slammed both palms on the podium. Cameras captured every twitch, every tear held back, every tremor mistaken for guilt. Maya Chen said, "Thou spin this," pulling at his sleeve, but he wouldn't leave. Evan Cole leaned against the wall, eyes gleaming like victory polished. Laura whispered, "Enough," her voice breaking, yet Grant shouted louder, "Truth matters." The crowd jeered, headlines already forming. Daniel Reed held up the flash drive, muttering, "It's all here," but no one turned. The chant from outside seeped in, louder than words, drowning everything. The loyal ally tried one last defense, voice cracking against the roar. Maya Chen shouted, "We have proof," waving papers above her head. Reporters swarmed, flashes firing, but their eyes saw only spectacle, not evidence. Grant Whitaker muttered, "They won't believe us," his shoulders collapsing. Evan Cole said smoothly, "This is desperation," his words dripping venom. Laura covered her face with her hands, unwilling to watch the unraveling. Daniel Reed stepped forward, trembling. "It's real," but his words fell into the void. Maya screamed, "Look at the data!" But even the silence afterward drowned her. The moment slipped, and with it, the chance to rewrite the narrative. The breaking point arrived, sharp and final. Grant Whitaker shouted, "I will not bow," voice cracking into echoes that rang like defiance and defeat at once. Reporters leaned closer, recording the fall in real time. Maya Chen whispered, "They'll crucify you," but he kept speaking. Evan Cole's grin widened, a silent coronation. Laura turned away, her silence louder than chants outside. Daniel Reed dropped the flash drive onto the podium, whispering, "Here's the truth." But no one listened. The chants thundered through the chamber, shaking the walls. Grant's final words, "History will remember," fell into air, already rewriting itself. The storm had consumed him, leaving only echoes. When the dust settled, allies who once shook his hand now vanished into shadows. Grant Whitaker said, "Not one of them called," staring at his silent phone. Maya Chen whispered, "They fear the stain," her eyes tired from endless nights. Evan Cole filled the vacuum quickly, headlines painting him as the steady voice who had stepped in. Laura folded laundry in silence, her back turned as if distance kept her safe. Daniel Reed muttered, "They'll regret not listening," but regret was no currency here. The chamber lights dimmed for another session, but his seat stayed empty, marked by silence. Grant pressed his palm against the seal on the door, whispering, "It doesn't belong to me anymore." At home, Laura's silence became final. She placed dinner on the table, but said nothing, the clatter of dishes filling the void. Grant Whitaker said, "Please talk to me," but her eyes never rose from the plate. Their son slipped out quietly, his hoodie pulled up, his footsteps careful not to echo. Maya Chen called with updates, her voice sharp, but Grant barely heard her. He whispered, "Family's gone," his fork untouched. Laura's lips pressed thin, her silence both shield and verdict. The television droned in the background, Evan Cole's face beaming as a guest of honor on primetime. Grant switched it off, muttering, "He replaced me even here." While Grant collapsed, Evan Cole rose. In the chamber, cameras adored him, capturing smiles rehearsed to look effortless. He said, "We must restore dignity," and the applause rang hollow yet deafening. Grant watched from his couch, muttering, "He stole every word." Maya Chen said, "We should expose him," but she knew the appetite for truth had already been devoured. Daniel Reed whispered, "I still have the proof," but the world had moved on. Laura avoided his gaze, folding another blanket as if busyness replaced belief. The seat Grant once filled now belonged to the betrayer, and history was already rewriting itself. The outsider spoke too late. Daniel Reed finally released the files, uploading the unedited truth online. He whispered, "It's all here," as if confession could change tides. Grant Whitaker said, "Will anyone see it?" his voice flat. Maya Chen leaned in, whispering, "The world doesn't rewind." The leak spread, but the headlines were already written. Attention already shifted. Laura scrolled silently, her face unreadable, then set the phone face down. Evan Cole smiled on a broadcast, unbothered, saying, "We must move forward." Grant laughed bitterly, "They buried me alive and truth is my headstone." Silence answered, heavier than any mob. Grant Whitaker stood in the rain outside the chamber, the seal glowing faint under floodlights. He whispered, "It's gone," breath visible in the chill. Maya Chen said, "We'll fight another way," though even she didn't believe it. Evan Cole's name echoed inside, replacing his. Laura turned her umbrella away, stepping further from him. Daniel Reed muttered, "History is cruel," as he tucked the proof back into his pocket. Grant placed his hand on the cold stone, whispering, "I was erased, but I live." The city roared with indifference, passing cars spraying puddles at his feet. Silence swallowed the rest, leaving only the echo of loss. The chamber once filled with his voice now echoed with silence. Grant Whitaker walked past the empty benches, footsteps hollow against marble. He whispered, "They erased me," and the words dissolved into the air. Maya Chen lingered at the door, unwilling to leave but powerless to change anything. Laura stayed home, her distance permanent. Daniel Reed said softly, "At least history will know," though history had already moved on. Evan Cole's name rolled from tongues now too afraid to mention Grant's. The weight of absence pressed heavier than the mob ever did. Outside, whispers replaced conversation. Former colleagues avoided his name as if it were cursed. Grant Whitaker said, "Even silence speaks louder than I do now." Maya Chen replied, "They're cowards," her tone sharp. Laura avoided gatherings, unwilling to hear what neighbors muttered. Daniel Reed muttered, "Truth sleeps in shadows," staring at the files no one wanted. Evan Cole stood in front of cameras, hailed as savior. Grant walked through crowds unseen, his presence lighter than air, his absence heavier than stone. Headlines sealed his fate with words sharp enough to carve marble. Grant Whitaker read one aloud, "Fall from grace complete," his voice flat. Maya Chen said, "They'll forget tomorrow," but forgetting felt worse than rage. Laura scrolled past articles without pausing, her silence final. Daniel Reed whispered, "It's all wrong," gripping the proof no one wanted. Evan Cole smiled from the front page, the betrayal framed as leadership. Grant folded the paper, muttering, "History isn't written, it's rewritten." In a quiet bar, Maya Chen raised her glass and said, "They'll regret forgetting." Grant Whitaker shook his head, whispering, "They've already forgotten." Laura did not join them, her silence now permanent absence. Daniel Reed tapped the flash drive on the table, muttering, "I should fave," shouted louder. The television above the bar played Evan Cole's speech, his smile polished, his words hollow. Grant looked at the screen, whispering, "He wears my skin." The bartender changed the channel without asking, as if mercy was silenced too. The final words did not come from a speech but from a whisper. Grant Whitaker stood beneath the Capitol steps at dawn, rain washing stone clean. He whispered, "They'll forget me, but not the silence they created." Maya Chen said, "History listens differently," but her voice trembled. Laura never arrived. Daniel Reed slipped the flash drive into his pocket, muttering, "One day." Inside, Evan Cole's name echoed, but outside, the storm faded. Grant closed his eyes, and the silence became his legacy.